think we're live. I'm going to assume we're live. I don't even have my paperwork out yet. But I believe we're live. It's a post-game show, Panther-Lair post-game, here on, well, it's September 10th now. It was September 9th up until about 15 minutes ago. It was the day of Pitt's second game of the season up until about 15 minutes ago. Now that day is over, moving on to Sunday. But yeah, that's not going to do anything about this game, is it? You know, I'm a minute late here because I had to grab a beer. I think we all know we need to have a beer during this one. I actually forgot to get a bottle. I should have got a bottle of something a lot stronger. Had a feeling I might need a bottle of something a lot stronger going into this game. See, I did and I didn't. I know I should wait a few minutes before everybody rolls in here. You know, I should tell you about the website. I should tell you about the YouTube channel and encourage you to like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have a good feeling about this game. I was really on the fence about what this game. I ended up, predicting that Pitt was going to win. I thought Pitt was going to win. I thought there was a way it was going to play out. You can ask our friends Jim Hammett and Jerry DePaula as we were breaking bread before the game. I said, here's what I think is going to happen. I think Cincinnati's going to start fast. I think Cincinnati's going to come out and score and kind of get Pitt's defense on its heels. And wouldn't you be surprised if by the end of the first quarter, the score was like 14-3 was my guess. I thought Cincinnati would score a couple times and Pitt would maybe muster a field goal. But then the defense would settle in. And then eventually Pitt would be able to put up some points and pull away. This was my expectation. So when the game started the way it did, Cincinnati scored twice and Pitt scored once in the first quarter. I wasn't entirely off. It was 10-7 instead of 14-3. But that was kind of what I thought was going to happen. But I didn't really know. And I didn't really know because I didn't know what to expect from Phil Jurokovec, from the wide receivers, from the offense as a whole. And I came out of last week's game. And one of the things I said a lot, and if you listen to the post-game show or if you listen to the live stream that we did on Wednesday night or just any of the morning Pitt videos through the week, I kept saying over and over, well, we didn't get any answers about Pitt, particularly the offense from the Wofford game. And that's a good thing because the only answers we were really going to get out of that game would be bad answers. Anything good we saw against Wofford was just going to be chalked up to the fact that it was Wofford. And so if we got any answers, they were going to be negative. It was going to be that the offense didn't play well or this or that. And so I didn't know what to think about this game. I didn't know what to expect out of the offense in this game. I could talk myself into some things happening. I could talk myself into Jurokovec and the receivers and the tight ends and all that kind of stuff. I could talk myself into all of it. But I didn't really know if it was going to come to pass. Because, and repeat after me if you've heard this before, we were counting on a lot of players doing things they've never done before. We were counting on career seasons out of a lot of guys. We're counting on a lot of guys to do better than they've ever done. We were counting on Phil Jurokovec to play a full, healthy season. And health has not been a problem yet, but there are obviously other issues. We're counting on Bub Means and Rodney Hammond and Kanate Mumfield and Gavin Bartholomew, just to name, Dejon Reynolds and freshman wide receivers, just to name the guys, on the offensive side. Never mind the players on the defensive side, all the starters they were replacing. We're counting on a lot of guys doing things we've never seen them do, things they have never done. And until that actually happens, it's hard to, it's hard to say, yeah, I believe this is going to happen because you're counting on sort of the unknown. And so you came into the Cincinnati game. Yeah, I could see them winning. I could see the offense being efficient. I could see this. I could see that. And I could also see things going wrong. And like I say, I sort of predicted it, particularly at least early on.
Sorry.
And what it came down to is another thing we talked about a lot, I think, over the summer. And if you watch these morning Pitt videos, you watch the live streams, I said this a lot of times. I said some version of this a lot of times, and I just said it to people again tonight, that the thing with this Pitt team, with as much as they were replacing on defense, with 6 new starters and replacing all the production of Kalijah Cansey and Servassier Dennis and Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett, there was likely going to be a period of transition for this defense. That early on in the season, It was not going to be up to speed. And it was going to take a little bit of time. They were probably going to give up plays, and they were probably going to get beat in some areas on defense. And the big question, now, and we say that with the expectation that that group would get better, that they're talented, the Pitt staff has recruited well enough defensively, and that they would coach them up and all that kind of stuff. The big question was, could the offense score enough to offset those defensive issues, particularly early in the season when Javon McIntyre and P.J. O'Brien and Donovan McMillan, who played a whole lot today. Don't let me forget to talk about that. But particularly early in the season when those guys were still getting broken in, when these young defensive ends or inexperienced defensive ends, because some of these guys aren't that young. Deion Hayes is a senior. Bam Brema is a redshirt senior. And some of these guys, still playing significant snaps for the first time. It was going to take a while for them to get comfortable on the field. During that period of transition and adjustment and learning and getting comfortable on the field, could the offense score enough to offset those defensive shortcomings? Could the offense put up enough points to make up for it? Could they outscore a team? And I don't just mean get one more point than the other. You know what I mean. If the other team is able to go up and down the field on Pitt's defense with any kind of consistency and regularity, could Pitt's offense make up the difference? Tonight, yesterday, however you want to look at the game that was just played at Acrsiure Stadium that wrapped up just a couple hours ago, whatever you call that, today, yesterday, we'll probably keep saying tonight because it feels like it's still part of the same night. Tonight, we found out that the answer was no. On this particular occasion, the answer was no. Because while Cincinnati scored 20 points in the first half, Pitt scored 7. Pitt completed 4 passes in the first half. 4 completed passes in the first half. If your defense is still figuring it out, if your defense is clearly not where it needs to be, if your defense still has a lot of room to grow, you better be able to do better than 4 completed passes and a half, unless you're Navy. And, brother, you're not Navy. Not even close. Not with the way you ran the ball against Cincinnati tonight. 83 rushing yards on 29 attempts, an average of 2.9 yards per carry. Now, the running backs were actually better. I added this up and then forgot where I wrote it down. But the running backs, Flemisher, Carter, and Hammond, combined for, what's the math on this? 1 + 7, 84 yards on 18 carries. Well, that's better than 4 yards per carry, right? Let me look. 84 divided by 18. 4.7 yards per carry. Almost 5 yards per carry for the running backs. That's pretty good. They only carry the ball 18 times. The offense wasn't good enough to offset the issues the defense was having. Now, the defense figured it out. The defense got a little bit better, and they were much better in the second half than they were in the first half. They gave up 180 rushing yards in the first half. In total, Cincinnati finished with 216 rushing yards. So only 36 net rushing yards in the second half after 180 in the first half. That's much better. That's a significant improvement. Emory Jones was not sacked in the first half. He was sacked twice in the second half. Pitt's defense improved. They weren't perfect. They weren't perfect, but they improved. They did not allow a drive of longer than 36 yards. The only touchdown they gave up came when Cincinnati recovered a fumble and had a very short field of 36 yards. Every other drive was like 24, 14, 10. They forced punts. 4 or 5 punts in the second half, I want to say. Cincinnati punted once in the first half, 4 times in the second half. The defense improved. They weren't perfect, but they improved. They gave up that touchdown. They gave up, obviously, the 2 third downs on the final drive. They improved. The offense dug the hole so deep, or at least, no, the defense dug the hole in the first half. The offense couldn't keep up with Cincinnati. So when the second half came around and the defense actually stepped up, the offense was so far behind they could never make it up. This was the worst case scenario. This was the biggest fear. This was the biggest concern heading into the season. If you asked any Pitt fan or anyone really watching the program or around the program, what was the biggest concern heading into the season? It's that guy right there throwing the ball. It's number 5. And not that the biggest concern was, oh man, we think he stinks. I can't believe we're going to the season with him. I don't think anyone knew what to expect. There was all the, he's throwing the best he's ever thrown. Oh, great. Great. I'm glad he's throwing the best he's ever thrown in training camp. But then you would get like offsetting reports that, well, we think he's going to be at his best when the game is actually played and the bullets are live and the pressure's coming and he's moving around. I actually do kind of believe that. I think Phil Jurokovec is best when he's moving around, when he's running around, when there's pressure and he's scrambling and throwing on the run. I didn't always agree with his decision-making tonight when he was in those situations, but he sure looked better doing that than he did when he would just drop back and try to, just throw as a drop back passer. There's 10 more games to play, ideally 11. And maybe he'll improve as a drop back passer and get more comfortable in the offense and get more comfortable with the receivers. But it sure didn't look like it was working tonight. Not when you go 10 of 32. You get 179 yards. You got 60 from Gavin Bartholomew. And then like another 19, like a play or two later on the same drive. So that made up a pretty significant chunk of your passing yardage there. But it was not good. The passing game was downright awful. And there are some things that we are never going to know. I know there's a lot of comments and questions. We're going to get to all this stuff, believe me, because we got a lot to say here. I'm going to get to it, but I'm just sort of rattling off thoughts as we go. One of the big issues we had last year, one of the big questions that we always struggled to answer, and I asked this question a lot at midseason, a lot on this podcast and to anybody we could, of coming down to this question of where is the biggest issue. Last year it was a question, is the biggest issue Keaton Slovis, or is the biggest issue Frank Cignetti in the offense? What was the biggest problem with the offense last year? Was it the scheme and the coaching and the game planning and the play calling? Or was it the quarterback and his execution and how he played? And the reality is it was probably a little bit of both. But we're asking that question again now, a version of that question, because we're throwing the wide receivers into it too. On some of those passes, particularly on I think Pitt's final drive, I think it was 2nd and 3rd down. What the hell was going on? Like, either Phil Jurokovec and Bub Means were running completely different plays, or Phil Jurokovec's accuracy is so bad that he literally could not hit the broadside of a barn, or Bub Means has no idea how to run a route, or Frank Cignetti just called something that makes no sense whatsoever. Someone dramatically screwed up on those plays, where it just looked like, are you guys even on the same team? You're wearing the same color, but I can't swear under oath that I believe you are actually on the same team, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it wasn't just those two. The passes were sprinkled throughout the game. Now, lest we blame Phil Jurokovec too much, Bub Means showed us something tonight. And look, take a drink before this confession. I said it all summer. I was driving the Bub Means hype train. Woo woo. I was all over it. With the thought that here's this guy who looks like he was built in a lab. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's athletic. He's got every physical tool that you could possibly want in a wide receiver. But there were passes today, not all of them, but a lot of them, that a good wide receiver, a very good wide receiver, a great wide receiver makes the catches. And they weren't easy. I'm not going to say that there were easy passes that Bub Means dropped or that hit his hands that he couldn't pull in. They were higher degree of difficulty catches. But if he's going to be the receiver, or if he is the receiver that he has been talked up to be, you got to make those catches. You got to make the one in the end zone. One of the better passes Phil Jurokovec threw all night. You got to make that catch. I don't even know what analysis needs to go into it. Your hands are on the ball, and multiple times Bub Means' hands were on the ball. and he finished with 0 receptions. 11 targets, 0 receptions. Now, some of them, I don't know if Jurokovec was trying to buy a pass interference penalty, which worked several times. I don't know if that was his intention with some of the passes that Bub Means. But at some point, some of the passes were there for Means to catch. And he couldn't bring them in. They were higher degree of difficulty catches, but the kind of catches that a good receiver has to make. Dejon Reynolds made better catches. Konate Mumpfield made better catches. Gavin Bartholomew made better catches. And I don't just highlight those guys because they were, they actually caught the ball. There were 3 of the 4 players who actually caught the ball. Carter Johnson had a pretty nice catch as well. I don't just highlight those guys for that. I highlight them because they made higher degree of difficulty catches. Konate Mumpfield's touchdowns were really good plays. Dejon Reynolds had, 2 catches, and I feel like both were good plays. He lost one as well, and had 6 targets total. But Gavin Bartholomew's touchdown was a really good catch. I thought Jurokovec threw well on the 2 touchdowns to Mumpfield. The 60-yard pass, the 60-yard catch and run for Bartholomew was a good play. He saw an open receiver and he got the ball to him, which we should not take for granted. I think we saw at other points in this game that we should not take that for granted. But by and large, I feel like those 3 guys made contested catches, combat catches. They made high degree of difficulty catches. And those are the kind of catches Bub Means has to be able to make. If he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on this team, if he's going to be the featured receiver on this team, he's got to make those catches. And if he's not going to make those catches, then he can't be looked at as the number 1 wide receiver. Konate Mumpfield had 4 targets in this game. Bub Means had 11. You tell me where the passes were better used. Well, I haven't given up completely on Bub Means, but Bub Means on September 9, 2023 looked a lot like Bub Means for most of the 2022 season. Not showing the improvement that we had been told he made, not showing the improvement that he needed to make, not showing the improvement that we believed he was capable of making, not showing the improvement that I still think he's capable of making. And it's tough because not all the passes were on the money. Not all the passes were good. But there were enough catchable balls that if he's going to be a game changer, a playmaker, an impact player, he's got to make those catches. It's as simple as that. I mean, he didn't. So you've got a running game that you're not committing to because you only gave the tailbacks 18 carries. You've got a passing game where you threw 32 passes. A third of those were thrown to one guy and he didn't catch a single one of them. And you've got a quarterback who just is all over the place. I think going forward, I'm telling Phil Jurokovec to look for the running lanes. And if he has any daylight, take it. If you're only going to hand the ball to the running backs 18 times in a game, and Phil Jurokovec drops back or rolls out, and he's got space to run for 5 or 6 yards, he better go. He better go. If I'm Frank Cignetti and I'm Pat Narduzzi, I'm not trying to protect Phil Jurokovec any longer. I'm not trying to keep him in the pocket. I'm not trying to avoid contact. He's a big guy. He can run. He can make plays. He showed he hit a 14-yard run, I think was his long run today. Just he needs to have not just the green light, he needs to have encouragement and be told, look, if you have daylight, you need to go. Because 4 yards on a quarterback keeper is 4 more yards than you're going to get when you throw the ball into the defender's back. Right? Or throw it into the third row of the stands. And I don't mean to be glib about it, and I don't mean to be harsh about it or mean about it, but this guy went 10 of 32 today. And whether it was on him, or whether it was Bub Means dropping passes, or whether it was the passing concepts or whatever, I don't know what the problem was. I got some theories, and I think we probably all know what we saw. But Phil Jurokovec needs to be looking to run. Maybe not run first, but run pretty soon after he, pretty much anytime he breaks the pocket. If he's got an open lane, he needs to go. I would not even have any hesitation. I would try, as the coaches, I would try to take away any bit of hesitation he's got. All right? Your receivers aren't getting open all that often. either due to their own ability or the scheme. Your number one receiver, the guy you're peppering with targets, as treating as a number one receiver, didn't catch any passes. Your tight end's good. Number 9 is good. 3 looks okay. 8 looks okay. You might as well run, particularly if you're only going to hand the ball off 18 times. I just don't. I was just looking because there was a little mark on my paper. I wanted to make sure Daniel Carter had 6 carries, not 8. Can't really tell. Anyway, that's all the offense. And I mean, we're obviously going to talk a lot more once I get into the comments and questions from you guys. On the defense, though, I mean, I feel like those guys just got blown up, pushed off the ball. It got better in the second half. Maybe they made adjustments, whatever it is. But in the first half, I mean, they were just getting pushed around. And when Cincinnati really needed it at the end, they got what they needed too. The final play, 3rd and 3. They handed off. They handed off. And it wasn't really an issue. That defensive line just didn't get much in the way of penetration, wasn't really doing much in the way of stopping the run. And it was one of the worst performances against the run that we've seen around here in a long time. I guess West Virginia ran pretty well on them last year, but this felt different because this is right from the start. Cincinnati was having success in the run. They hit an end around on the first drive for 25 yards, which they added 15 yards thanks to a late hit out of bounds by P.J. O'Brien. And then on the very next play, Kiner, the running back who ran for 153 yards in this game, busts off an 11-yard run. We've not seen a Pat Narduzzi defense get crushed by the run like that in a long time. We certainly don't see it happen very often. This is a pretty concerning way to start the season. And again, there was part of me that thought that this might be the case, that this defense might take a little while to get going. It might be a little bit slow early on and not be as good and as effective as defenses we've seen in the past. And so that's happening. But it can't happen all season, and it can't continue to happen. And I think they got better in the second half. Whatever improvements they made, adjustments they made, I mean, that needs to carry over to the West Virginia game and every other game going forward. But they sure didn't look good in the first half. Well, that's concerning. They got to Emory Jones a couple of times in the second half, so I mean that was good. Pass defense was relatively solid, not a lot really given up there. Jones was 18 of 26 for 25 passing yards. I was trying to figure out, I was like, but their receivers tallied up to 155 passing yards. I forgot it's because one of their wide receivers threw a pass for 30 yards. Pitt didn't defend that one. Well, P.J. O'Brien was sort of there. The guy still just made a catch. It's just hard to talk about the defense. I mean, the defense is a young group. 6 new starters, replacing all those productive guys. You knew there were going to be some bumps along the way. It was going to be some growing pains. It's the other side of the ball that, I mean, they don't look... They don't look like they can run sort of an effective, stable offense. Phil Jurokovec seems to need chaos to succeed. He needs to be in chaos, which is not the way you want to live. You don't want to base your whole offense on chaos. That doesn't seem viable or sustainable. And I always, and I'm going to get to the comments in a second here. This is the last thing I'm going to say. I always try and, sort of the classic, I'm the rational thinker here. The classic reasonable thing to say is, look, never as good as you are when you win, never as bad as you are when you lose. And that's probably the case here. Highs and lows and all that kind of thing. The problem is this is the first time we've seen this offense with this quarterback and in a real game, and they look terrible. I'm just going to call it what it is. They look really bad for whatever reason. And if it's Cignetti, if it's Jurokovec, if it's Means, if it's the line, if it's whoever you want to put it on, they looked really bad, and they struggled mightily. And so here we are looking at them in their first game against real competition, and they look like they're in trouble. It's not that plays can't be made. It's just that they don't seem to really be able to build sort of an effective, sustained offense. And that's concerning. So you're not as bad as you are when you lose, but God help you if this is who you really are. If what we saw tonight is who you really are. All right, let's get over to the comments and questions. I know people have been chomping at the bit here. Let's see. Don't forget, of course, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all those things. I'm going to get to the super chatters first. As always, if you want to we got a lot of comments and questions in here. So if you want to make sure we read your comment and your question, you can be a super chatter where you click the little $ down at the bottom and you can kick a couple bucks to the podcast, support us, and we will definitely make sure we read your comment and your question. Michael B started us off as a super chatter. Says, Chris, it's official. Jurokovec sucks. He was terrible. Please tell me Narduzzi will sit his ass on the bench if he continues to suck. Also, the O-line was garbage and Pitt was manhandled at the line of scrimmage. I'm embarrassed. All right. A few things. If Jurokovec can't move the offense down the field, if he can't make plays, I believe Narduzzi and Cignetti will make a change. I really do. I mean, there's not really a point in debating that and going back and forth. It's my opinion. It's your opinion. You don't think he'll ever do it. I think he will do it. Oh, by the way, do we finally have conclusive evidence to shut up everybody who says that Narduzzi always defers to the seniors and will never start a freshman over a senior and that kind of stuff? Because he did exactly that today. Jason Collier out of the starting lineup on the offensive line. B.J. Williams, a true freshman, in. Freshman replaces senior. We no longer need to have those conversations. Can we put those all aside about how Narduzzi always defers to veterans and always defers to seniors and all that? He'll never play younger players over older players. He's loyal to a fault. All those things that we've all been saying for 8 years, can we just finally put them to bed? What better example could there ever be than starting a freshman offensive lineman over a senior offensive lineman, which is what happened tonight. We'll talk about the offensive line in a second. Michael B says, the O-line was garbage and Pitt was manhandled at the line of scrimmage. A couple of things about that. One, like Don Corleone, he's really good. I mean, that dude could play. Pitt could use him. They don't really have D tackles that are built like him. It's not really their style of defense, but they could use him. And Juwan Briggs, too. They recruited Juwan Briggs. They probably would have liked to have had him tonight because he probably would have helped them on both sides. He would have helped not kill their offensive line and also help their defensive line considerably. So that's the first thing. Those guys are really good. They're going to be a challenge for everybody they play, everybody they face. The second thing, Jake Cradle got blown up by that guy, by Corleone. It happened a bunch of times, and it created pressure on Phil Jurokovec. I also think Cincinnati did a lot with blitzing and moving guys around and the stunts and the twists and all these different things and the slanting and everything. And that helped create some of the pressure as well. I think Jurokovec had some clean pockets. I think he had some time to throw. And quite frankly, sometimes when he had a clean pocket, he held onto the ball too long and didn't get rid of it. It was almost better sometimes when he got pressured and had to get flushed out. I still think there's really good linemen on this team. I still think Mac and Salvez is good. I still think Branson Taylor's pretty solid. I think Cradle and Zabovic are okay. B.J. Williams is really interesting, being a starting freshman offensive lineman, the first freshman to start on the offensive line at Pitt in 10 years. I think Dorian Johnson was the last one in 2013. And you still have Ryan Baer sitting out there. Probably should be on the field, because I think he probably is the most talented lineman on this team. Just in terms of pure talent. He doesn't have the experience that some of the older guys have, but he's got a lot of talent and he's really good. So I don't think the offensive line is garbage. I think they ran into a really good defensive line and a defense that did a lot of stuff that made it difficult for them. But they do need to take a step forward. I mean, they need to be better. This is 2 weeks in a row. Like, and Wofford was doing this and doing that. It made it tricky. Well, okay, but at a certain point, if you're really good it shouldn't matter what the other team does or who they have. You should be able to hold up and do your job, and the offensive line has to take a step in that direction. All right, let's get to some more super chatters in here. Evan says Pitt wins this game with average quarterback play. 10 out of 32 and fumbling is bad. Post-game comments even worse. Phil Jurokovec's a bum. Christian Bear starts and Pitt wins, no doubt. I can't say I can't say Pitt wins, no doubt, if Bear starts. Do I think that Bear probably does better than 10 of 32? Yeah. I mean, like, I think most average Power 5 quarterbacks would do better than 10 of 32. The fumble was a killer. The fumble, they're at a point there where see the 36-yard touchdown drive. It was still 20-7 at that point. But that would have been a chance to chip away at it. It set up, Cincinnati for what ultimately ended up being the game-winning touchdown when they got from 20 to 27. And I mean, that was a killer play. It was an accident. These things happen, but if you're going to play as poorly as that offense did, you have to avoid turnovers, which they did. Other than that fumble, yeah, it was bad. It was really poor. It was a really poor display. WG Runyon 132 says, my lying eyes showed Phil was just not accurate. His afterplay reaction confirmed it too. That was a defined concern before training camp. When will Narduzzi acknowledge that? Look, I mean, we talked about it a lot. We talked a lot about Jurokovec's accuracy, how accuracy was a problem. I talked about it even after the Wofford game. I said, I think there were accuracy issues, and that was what I had heard, kind of the book on him coming out of Boston College, and then even in training camp a little bit. And we talked about it from time to time that he needs to be accurate. He needed to stay on the field, and he needed to throw the ball accurately. And tonight he didn't. I mean, he didn't. He had a few nice throws, but he wasn't on target, not the way he needs to be. I think his arm strength is fine. I know people have kind of questioned it. I still think he's got a strong enough arm, but he's got to be able to. I mean, he's got to get the ball to the receivers. I mean, he's got to be more accurate than he has been, but I think that's who he's always been. Not necessarily the most accurate passer, but he's big and he can run and he's got a strong arm, and so you can make a lot of plays that way. But if your bread and butter play is pressure and the pocket collapsing and you get out and scramble and heave the ball 40 yards downfield, that's cool every now and then, but that can't be the basis of your offense. If you are at your best in chaos, I mean, that means you have to live in chaos. That's a little concerning. Let's see. Biz says Jurokovec is not good at all. Nate Yarnell, when? Tired of a staff that sleeps on quarterbacks the way they slept on Pickett. It's time. I'm not sure they slept on Pickett. They started him in the final game of his freshman year. He started like every game after that for the next 4 years, right? Did they sleep on him? Maybe in terms of like what they do with him or what they allowed him to do. I mean, I think he had to work up to 2021, and I think he was showing signs of it in 2020 when he got hurt. But I think you have to work up to the kind of 2021 volume and approach to play calling. And I don't think Jurokovec is there with Cignetti. Let's see, I think there was another super chatter down here. There it is, Stephen Richmond. Stephen says, a super senior quarterback from the portal has to be fully baked to be worth anything to the team. Fully baked. I think I know what you mean. Like prepared and fully developed. I don't think Jurokovec is. At some point, the snaps are more valuable to our developing players. So, I mean, when you talk about developing players, if you talk about developing players at quarterback, I mean, you're talking about Nate Yarnell and Christian Bear, who are both redshirt sophomores. They have 2 more years after this. I don't know. Like, I think if they're in a game, say, next week at West Virginia, or, when they come back and play Carolina the week after that at Acrsiure Stadium, I would think if those games are getting away, from Pitt and the quarterback play has not improved over what we saw tonight, then Pat Narduzzi and Frank Cignetti will go with Christian Bear for a couple drives and see how it goes. I don't know if there's a point in the season, like say it continues like this and they just stick with it and they lose games and they end up in a bad spot record-wise, that they say, all right, we're just going to make a change because Phil's done after this year. Ver and Yarnell are going to be around for a while. Let's go with those guys and see what we can get and see what we have and start developing them and coaching them up. I mean, that's sort of a defeatist way. You sort of give up on the season if that's what you do. I think I'd rather see them make the change because they believe it can help them win this year rather than just preparing for next year. But you are going to be in a situation next year where you're going with a first-year starter at quarterback. Probably Ver will be the guy. And so in that regard, maybe it'd be better to see him now rather than wait a year and see him for the first time. But I don't know. I don't know how many more 10 completion performances you can have. Because even if they came back and won this game, and say Jurokovec finishes with 12 completions, 13 completions, I don't think we'd be sitting here putting too much lipstick on that pig. I think we would still be talking pretty honestly about how off a lot of those passes were. And maybe none of it's on Jurokovec. Maybe it's all the receivers. Maybe it's all the passing concepts and the scheme, and it's all bad. And Jurokovec's doing the best he can with what he's got. Maybe. I'm inclined to think there were more plays to be made out there by Jurokovec and by the receivers. It feels like they left a whole lot on the field. All right, let's see. I think that might be all the super chatters. If you want to get your comment or question in, you should probably be a super chatter. We're going to start at the top and work through as many as we can here. Nathan Kennedy says, Chris, if we operate under the assumption that the OC and quarterback are not good, how can the fan base get behind this team? I do not think either assumption is a stretch. They are both bad. Well, you can get behind the team because they're your favorite team. You can be really frustrated and you can be really mad and not want to watch a bad product. But your team is your team, man. Whether you agree with decision making or not, your team is your team. You might want them to play a different player. You might want them to hire a different coach and all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, your team is your team. And that's always kind of how I've looked at it. It's your team. So you can be really frustrated. It's like family. You can get really frustrated with people, but they're still your family. It's still your team. You still, that's how I look at it. You can be a fan however you choose. I got a super chatter here. Mike Shaner says Phil's presser was maybe worse than his performance. All right, so all right, let's talk about it. There was a comment. I'm trying to find the quote. Noah Hiles is who I retweeted it. He had the quote from Phil Jurokovec. Phil was asked about the fans booing. And Phil said, quote, I think if you're a grown-ass man booing in the stadium, that's pathetic, but we have to play better. I think he said something like, I think if you're a grown-ass man booing in the stadium, you need to take a look at yourself. That's pathetic, but we have to play better. That was Phil's comment. You never are really going to win if you admonish the fans. I think someone who's been around as long as him knows going in that the fans are going to be with you and they're going to be against you. And it's going to pretty much depend on whatever your last play was. He should know by now. And, the right answer, the best answer to that question, just because we've heard people get asked before, is, the fans are fans and they're passionate and we appreciate their support and we're going to try and do better the next time for them. Or you could say what Jurokovec said. And obviously a comment born of frustration, not just frustration with the boos, but frustration with the whole evening. His own performance, I'm sure, was frustrating to him. The performances of his teammates were probably frustrating to him. And just the whole situation was probably pretty frustrating for him. And, that question, he let off a little bit of steam. I know. I remember Manessa Garner one year, 2013 or 14, somewhere around there. Fans were booing, and he said, "We don't care about the." He was asked about it. He said, "I don't care about the fans. We don't care about the fans. We don't hear it when they cheer, and we don't hear it when they boo or whatever." I mean, it's not true. You do. You hear it when they boo. You hear it when they cheer. The best answer is just, we appreciate the fans' support. We know they're passionate and they want us to win, and we want to win, and so we're going to keep doing what we can. I would think Phil would know that, being his age and having played as long as he did, played as long as he has, but I think his frustration got the better of him in that situation. RJCman38 is a super chatter, but I don't know where your comment is. You got to put your comment with the super chat. I'll see if I see anything from you as we scroll through. Let's see. H2P_STRU says Rodney did something to get in the doghouse and it needs to end because it is costing the team. I don't really get it. I don't get why Rodney Hammond only had 11 carries through 2 games. Wofford, you want to protect him. You want to, keep him healthy and make sure he doesn't get hurt. So you only give him the ball 5 times. I get it. Only giving him the ball 6 times today. I didn't get it. And I understand they're playing from behind. They need to pass, but I mean, the running game is still your bread and butter. It didn't look like it tonight. It didn't look like that was the emphasis of the offense in this game. Wolf HD says people crapping on Means is wild. The man had a step or two each throw, and each throw was always underthrown. Jurokovec can't throw a ball past 15 yards. He can, he just can't throw it on target, I think. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say can't, but he can throw it more than 15 yards. He just had a lot of passes that weren't on target tonight. Bub Means did get separation, and yeah, some of the passes I'm talking about that he should have caught could have been thrown better, should have been thrown better. They weren't, but that doesn't mean they were uncatchable. He's got to be able to make those plays. If he wants to be the receiver, if he is going to be the receiver that he's talked about being, that his teammates have talked about him being, that his coaches have talked about him being, he's got to make those catches. There was one, I forget which one it was. I don't know if it was one in the end zone or a little bit later, and Jerry DePaula turns to me and he says, "Great receivers make that catch." I said, "That's true. They do." And, it wasn't an easy catch. A bunch of the ones he didn't make tonight were not easy by any stretch of the imagination. But there were catches he needed to make. If he's going to be that guy, if he's going to be the guy, he needs to make those catches. Get through as many of these as possible. John Johnson says, one of the worst games I've ever seen a quarterback play. So many throws were not close to on target. Homer Simpson says Phil is average at best, but he has the worst wide receivers in the country. They can't even run a route. No one was on the same page. Does Bub Means think he's Chase Claypool? Stephen Richmond says, did I imagine this, or did they bring 5 or 6 rushers a lot and we took 0% advantage of slants, screens, swing routes, etc.? Yeah, I don't really I mean, I would have to go back and look and see what they did as far as like hot routes and things like that. But when Cincinnati brought pressure, they got home a lot. And when they got home, Phil often didn't really have a good option, a good way to respond to it or to handle it. Just kind of scrambled and then didn't really I mean, I feel like the whole stadium at times was yelling, "Run!" And he needed to. He needed to run. And ideally in West Virginia and going forward, he's going to run more. He should. I mean, he should be, I don't know about like a Garrett Schrader leading the team in rushing attempts, but he needs to run more. Travis Spagnolo says, when you evaluate Jurokovec, also remember he had a shoulder injury 2 years ago and hasn't been right throwing since, underthrowing everyone and throwing behind guys. That's on coaches for taking a chance. Yeah, I don't know. I do remember him having the injuries. I don't know how it's affected him. You would like to think that Cignetti has that kind of info in the background due to his connection with Jurokovec and history with Jurokovec, that he knows the context there. But I mean, I think there's probably some truth to what you're saying, maybe lingering effects of an injury, but I also think even going back to high school, he wasn't the most accurate quarterback. And I think at Boston College, he wasn't the most accurate quarterback. Look, I always, when they would do the draft preview stuff this spring for Zay Flowers, and it was constantly, they always said, like, look how bad the quarterback play was. And the thing I always said was, yeah, well, the quarterback was under pressure all the time because of the offensive line. The offensive line at Boston College was not very good. It's why Jurokovec got hit so much. And it's why he was scrambling and often made bad throws that Zay Flowers would catch and look great doing so. You know, maybe there was a bit more of it on the quarterback than I suspected. Maybe I was trying to give him too much benefit of the doubt. Shane G says this program is a train wreck. Narduzzi won once with a fifth-year NFL likely star quarterback and in a trash ACC. No. I mean, he won the Coastal in 2018 also. He's won the second most games, of any coach in any program in the conference since 2015. I think they've been fine. I think, you have to find the program's level of where they're supposed to be. And I think you also, have to look at the circumstances of a season within the context of a season. Like where should they be right now? We see with the personnel that they have. Okay, well, what should that translate to? And I mean, you're basically getting what we told you was a distinct possibility of what you would get. A team that, the defense was inconsistent and the offense, had some struggles, couldn't make up the difference on the defensive inconsistencies. I mean, we talked about this all summer. If you watched the Morning Pitt videos or read the things we wrote on Panther-Lair.com or watched the live streams, and we talked about it a lot, that there could be some times like this. Now, we didn't know what the defensive inconsistencies were going to look like. We didn't know what the offensive struggles would look like. We told you it was a very distinct possibility that Pitt would have to experience some growing pains, particularly on defense. Next week will be pretty telling as far as how much they've grown from week 2 to week 3. Super chatter down here. Nathan Kennedy says, are you overly surprised that this quarterback and OC are not productive? Overly surprised. No, not necessarily. I mean, I think you can look at one good year at Boston College. And look, I'll sit here. I'll be the first to say that all summer I hedged my bets on this offense. All summer I did. And you can ask any family member, any neighbor, any friend, when they all ask me, how's Pitt looking this year? Or how's Pitt going to be this year? My answer has been consistently, I don't know. Because I didn't know, and maybe still don't know, but maybe even worse, maybe I do. I didn't know how the quarterback was going to play, and it really felt like it all came down to that. And it still feels like it all comes down to that. With better quarterback play, yeah, they probably do win today. I don't disagree about that, because better quarterback play can help make up the difference when the defense is struggling like it did in the first half. And so that was always a concern for me. The offense was a concern for me because I didn't think Keaton Slovis was as bad as he looked last year. I don't think he was great. I think he was somewhat close to the level he played at, but I also thought there were issues with the offense and the offensive coordinator and how it meshed with the quarterback and the kind of system they tried to run with the quarterback who maybe didn't necessarily fit that system. We were told the familiarity was going to be a big factor here, that Phil Jurokovec's familiarity with Frank Cignetti, his familiarity with the offense, the offensive players and their familiarity with the offense, having played in it for a year. We were told that all these things were going to lead to more success, to a more effective offense, a more competent offense, a higher producing offense. Deep shots, deep shots, deep shots, deep shots, deep shots. There were going to be all these deep shots, deep shots, deep shots, deep shots. Well, maybe not. And I had those concerns. I did have those concerns over the summer. That I didn't know what this offense was really going to be. And the closer we got to the season, kind of the less confident I became. I became more and more concerned about what it was going to look like and how it was going to work. Through 2 games, 1 real game, it's not great. Brian Wintermeyer is a super chatter, and we appreciate that. I don't know if you have something you wanted to ask, Brian, but we appreciate you being a super chatter. RJ Seaman was a super chatter. He says timeouts are an issue for Narduzzi. WTF. First half, it's like he's saving them. Second half, wasted timeouts too early. He panics. Signetti playing and calling is not good either. First half timeouts, I didn't really notice. I mean, they called a timeout, I guess, to ice the kicker. I don't really know. They called a timeout on 4th down. I didn't really have a problem with the play calling and the timeouts in the first half. And I thought he called the timeouts in the second half a little bit early, but you had to call them at some point. Well, I think they were inside the 6-minute mark at that point. Let me find the exact timing. Yeah, they called their first timeout at 6:02, but I didn't hate that. Cincinnati was at the 22. They kicked off. They punted down to the 22. They called a timeout, and I mean, they called the 2 timeouts, and I mean, it pretty much worked. I mean, Pitt called that second timeout at 5:52, and they got the interception and got the ball at the Cincinnati 43 with plenty of time. I didn't feel like he called the timeouts too early. That wasn't why they lost. I mean, you needed to get a stop on one of the 2 third downs at the end. You needed to convert and score after the interception. I thought it was fine calling the timeouts. It was a little bit earlier than you would typically do it, but I didn't think that was a big issue for them. Biz is a super chatter. Biz says, everyone was absolutely high on this offense, and it was totally a lie. I knew last year when I was on the Yarnell train over Keaton, this is not good. There was some hype around the offense, and I think it built through training camp because the players were getting excited about it, the coaches were getting excited about it, and we were reporting the things that they were saying. My thing always was, can Phil Jurokovec stay healthy, and can he return to the form that he had basically 3 years ago? I mean, I think multiple times I said, look, last year they relied on a quarterback who hadn't been good in 3 years, and you saw what happened, and now they're going to try and do it again. They're going to rely on a quarterback who hasn't been good in 3 years, and they're going to see what happens. I thought there were parts of the offense that should be pretty good, the offensive line, the running backs. There were parts that had big question marks, like the quarterback and the wide receivers. The O-line maybe hasn't been as good as we thought it would be, as good as people hoped, but I think it's been good enough. The running backs, we just haven't really seen. I guess they ran well against Wofford, but I don't think we really got an opportunity to see them in this game tonight. So, I think there was some cautious optimism about the offense. I remained concerned about it, and maybe not even concerned, but just a wait and see approach because I just didn't know what to expect. Let's see. Brian Wintermeyer says, what changed with the defense in the second half? It was a significant difference. What changed? I don't know. I don't know what they changed. I'm not smart enough to tell you what the defensive adjustments are and that kind of thing. But they clearly did a better job stopping the run. They did a better job getting after Emory Jones. I mean, they played better, and I think it showed up in the stats and the overall performance in the second half. You need to keep improving on that side of the ball. You need guys like Deion Hayes to keep getting better and being more effective in the pass rush. Bam Brema, and certainly the safeties, Javon McIntyre and Stephon Hall and P.J. O'Brien and Donovan McMillan. It was interesting in the second half. I don't know if you noticed this, something we can dig into more as the week goes on, but they really, for most of the second half, and I'll check the snap counts and kind of compare my notes to the Pro Football Focus snap counts. We'll have it on Panther-Lair.com. There was a lot of Javon McIntyre playing field safety and Donovan McMillan on the field a whole lot. McMillan and McIntyre working together more than PJ O'Brien and McIntyre. O'Brien started the game, played a little bit in the second half, but not too much, and I didn't really see him get hurt or anything like that. And it ended up being Donovan McMillan and Javon McIntyre together, which is a pretty interesting pairing. And it'll definitely be something to watch going forward to see if McMillan keeps ascending, because he sort of seemed to ascend in the second half of this game tonight. It'll be interesting to see if he keeps ascending. Mark Thurkel says, why not a quarterback change? It was obvious that Jurokovec wasn't good. Will they ever make a change? My only thought in this game is that, and I mean, this is my own just guess. Pat Narduzzi, it was the first question asked to Narduzzi. Did you think about making a quarterback change? No. I don't even think he said much more than just no. I have the transcript right here. First question to Narduzzi. Was there any consideration in the second half to make a change at quarterback? No. I think my guess would be that Pat Narduzzi would tell you he didn't want to pull he wanted to give Jurokovec a chance to show what he could do. He saw enough from him in the spring and the summer to believe that he was the best option for the job, and so he wanted to see what Jurokovec could do and how he could handle a situation. Could he bring the team back? Could he lead the team back? And he, to some extent, did. I mean, he got close, right? He got within a touchdown. That would be my guess on Narduzzi's explanation of why not changing a quarterback. I do believe he will change a quarterback if performances like this continue. If he doesn't, then I think there are some real questions to be asked, and he'll probably talk about the offensive line and the wide receivers and this and that. But I mean, the reality is the quarterback's got to play better and throw better and just overall be better than Jurokovec was tonight. All right, see if there's anything else that's coming in here. Oh, another super chatter there. Will says the defense looked like they weren't reading their keys the first half. Lots of spacing issues. Jurokovec seems to have a boneheaded play with extended minutes. Or PJ O'Brien, seems to have a boneheaded play with extended minutes. Yeah. I guess, yeah, I agree. I mean, it looked like they weren't reading their keys or spacing issues. I think there are probably some of the things that you would expect to see from a defense with young players, guys stepping in for the first time. And that was the case with the safeties. That was the case with the defensive ends. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the, I tend to think of the D tackles getting blown off the line of scrimmage, and that can be a reason that a team is able to run the ball well. But I mean, I think also defensive ends and their alignments and their, contain and reading their keys and where they're supposed to be, they can open up a lot of run lanes if they're not in the right position. And I think that was probably the case, a good part of the deal, a good part of the evening tonight. So it was ugly. I mean, it was ugly in the first half for that defense. I think they have higher expectations for that. I think they're going to, this is a big opportunity for the defense. I would say that. This is a big opportunity for the defense to build on what they did in the second half and carry it over to next week. I mean, they're going to face a challenge against West Virginia's rushing offense. I mean, West Virginia's, able to run the ball. I don't know what they did against Duquesne today, but they ran the ball semi-well against Penn State. They ran the ball well against Pitt last year. That's where they're really going to challenge Pitt, and so this defense is going to have its work cut out for it. But, I mean, who am I kidding? We're all going to be sitting there watching the quarterback. Does the quarterback improve from week 2 to week 3? From, real game number 1 to real game number 2? I don't know. And how do they approach the structure of the offense and the game planning and the play calling with Jurokovec heading into week 2? Because it's obvious they're going to have to do some different things with him. Like I said, if it was me, I would be encouraging him to run all the time. All the time. I don't know if I'd call a ton of design runs, but if he drops back and sees a lane, run. I mean, just run. I think you'll get good plays out of it, and I would throw caution to the wind in that regard if it were me. But it's not, right? It's not. All right, it's been about an hour. It's late. I really appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight, all the super chatters. Oh, we got one more super chatter here. Michael B says, Chris, why do you really think Narduzzi will pull Jurokovec if he keeps playing like this? He's stuck with Slovis the whole damn season. He won't bench Jurokovec. Well, okay, so here's the other part of it, right? He will bench Jurokovec. Okay, let me not even get specific. He'll bench a player who's not playing good enough to win if there's a player behind him that Narduzzi and the staff believe will play well enough to win. I don't think they believed Nick Patty could do better than Keaton Slovis was doing last year. And I don't talk to me about the Sun Bowl. Nick Patty completed less than 50% of his passes in the Sun Bowl, averaged like 4-point-something yards per attempt. Okay? He made, cojones plays in the final 2-minute drive, and it was awesome, and it was great, and I love Nick, and he's a great kid, and it's been great to watch him here. The times when he's gotten a chance to go in, he would make plays, but it's not like he went out there and threw, completed 65% of his passes for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns against UCLA. They didn't pull Keaton Slovis because they didn't believe there was a better option behind him. Now, if Nick Patty's healthy for the Georgia Tech game, do they make a change? I don't know. But that's what it came down to. And so this year, if Jurokovec continues to struggle and plays like he did today, throws 10 of 32 passes, I think they would go to Christian Veer because I think they do believe in Christian Veer because I think they do believe Christian Veer is a good option, a guy who can play winning football for them. So I believe that they would do it if that situation comes to pass. If Jurokovec continues playing like this. That's why I believe it. Because it's what they did in 2017. Really the last time they were in a situation where they had, poor quarterback play and a viable backup option. Somebody that the staff viewed as a viable backup option, and they did it. They benched Max Brown for Ben DiNucci. They benched DiNucci for Max Brown. They benched DiNucci for Kenny Pickett. So I believe they will do it because I believe that they believe in Christian Veer. All right, it's getting late. Got more work to do. Got to get more content ready on Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you check out the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. If you want to keep up with everything, and of course message boards, which are very lively, even though it's almost 1:30 in the morning on a Saturday night. People are on the message boards getting busy. So you should come and hang out and talk with other Pitt fans, share in the misery, which is much better than being miserable alone. That's what we all did here tonight, right? Share in the misery of a loss. It's always fun to do. All right, like this video and subscribe to YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our video content. We'll have a day after recap on Monday morning, some final thoughts on this game, and then we'll move through the week. That'll be on the Morning Pitt first thing in the morning on Monday. Pitt loses 27-21. What are you going to do? They were going to lose at some point. Now we'll see how they bounce back. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all the super chatters and everybody who put their comments and questions. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Get some sleep. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. We will catch up with you again on Monday morning for the Morning Pit right here. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.